Welcome back to the Mold Show, the podcast exploring the intersection of mold and health. Today, we're going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to have a little fun and share some facts. We're going to play a game of mold trivia. We're going to test your knowledge. And Adam, don't tell him yet. Plus, we're revisiting some of the most common mold myths out there because let's face it, there's a lot of bad info floating around out there. No pun intended. So whether you're dealing with mysterious health symptoms, a funky smell you just can't locate, or you just want to make your home healthier, we're glad you're joining us today on The Mold Show.
Welcome back to The Mold Show. I am your host, Adam Horn. As always, joined by my co-host, Sean McGrath. What's up, Sean? How you been, man?
I'm good, Adam. I'm a little sad. We've been doing our best to make time to do this, and we just haven't been able to work it out. So we apologize for the long delay between episodes. It is our goal to push more episodes out and push more content out. But when we're out working all day long and fielding so many calls after the recent storms, it's really tough.
Yeah, Mother Nature has a way of getting in the way in our industry. Not to mention all of our families and friends that have been affected by, all the flooding and the hurricanes and the storms. It's been an experience, that's for sure. I think I may have
I'm just looking at myself in the camera. I look like I've been up all day, every day, helping people. I haven't had time to.
Well, got a couple extra grays over the last.
Haven't even had time to freshen up for this. We just made it happen because we both had a small little window to do this. But so it was fun being with you this weekend at Axe Holistic Health. Yeah. We attended an event this weekend at Axe Holistic Health here in Tampa. Shout out to them. It was a great event, some smaller event, wonderful event, but everything they presented was awesome. I can't say enough about their team over there. Everyone is so friendly, has so much knowledge. So highly recommend Axe Holistic Health. It was fun. Nice. It was nice getting to meet a lot of those people there, even the attendees, and just educating people about mold a little bit. So many people had really good questions, and I really enjoyed those conversations.
Well, what always surprises me is people's level of awareness, and especially in that setting where people are hyper focused on their health and all the variables, including environmental stressors. They were asking the right questions, and it was good to see that there are people out there who have identified that there are potential issues and understand that they need to do something about it. And that's kind of where we step in to guide them through this process. We met a couple out there, and like we do, we talk about this from time to time. One of them's like gung ho, and the other one's like, nothing. It's nothing. So you're going to get some of that too. And I'm sure some of you guys who are watching this, are probably, or not probably, could be in that position. I will say where it's affecting you, and those others around you may not necessarily take it as seriously as you do. So, that's something we can actually talk about. I know it's a little sticky. I think you and I have been in situations where, one party is adamant and the other is nonchalant or even dismissive completely of what could be going on. And it's just another hurdle, another variable that a lot of people who are affected by it have to deal with.
Yeah, you're right. It creates a lot of tension in a relationship, and understandably so. A lot of stress that goes into it. But there have been times where I'm sitting at the table reviewing everything, just with two spouses arguing, yelling back and forth at each other, which becomes really uncomfortable for us because you think we're all on the same page when we get there until we start finding things. But going back to this weekend, it always surprises me, and I guess disappoints me in a lot of ways, to hear other people's experience with what they think a mold inspection and mold remediation is. Yeah. They're always so blown away by our process, from the inspection standpoint, the testing standpoint, the reporting standpoint. They're always like so blown away with how thorough we are. And to me, that's just should be a standard, honestly. and just hear how amazed they are with how detailed we are in our niche. It just it makes you feel good because you're helping a lot of people. At the same time, it becomes pretty disappointing knowing our industry is failing a lot of people.
Well, just speaking from an outsider's perspective, obviously, and for those who don't know, and I usually mention it at the beginning of the show, I'm a state of Florida licensed mold remediator. Sean is a state of Florida licensed mold assessor. A fancy way for saying that my company does the removal, his company does the testing, and the state of Florida separates the two. You can hold both licenses, but you can't test your own work for any officially test your own work, um, and remediate the same project. So uh, I will say, from my perspective, there is a vast ocean of difference between one assessor and another. There isn't anybody else out there that goes to the extent or they're as thorough as certified mold assessments. So far, I haven't found anybody that is willing to inspect the environment, not just willing, but understands potential source areas and pushes people to check further into areas that commonly get affected. And I think it's kind of damning if you are a mold assessor or your mold assessor just comes in and at face value just tests in one area or doesn't even consider looking throughout the rest of the environment for other potential issues. Because why are you even having testing done if you're only willing to barely scratch the surface, unless you don't want those answers? So it's frustrating.
Yeah, and I can't remember if this was while you were there. I know you had to leave early the other day, or if it was
Mhm.
after you left. But there's a lady that asked a question about her daughter and how her daughter just keeps going in circles with her health. One thing they fix one thing, and then they something else pops up. They deal with that, something else pops up. And Dr. Axe used the phrase, "It sounds like you're just playing whack a mole right
Mhm.
now." And that really resonated with me because we help so many people with that same story. It just seems like one health issue after another that they're dealing with. And the same thing goes for their house. A lot of times, especially when we're traveling to other states and these people call us desperate for answers, they've already had other remediators and inspectors out that very limited reports that show, oh, is this over here? So they try to address that, thinking that's going to fix the issue, but they're still dealing with problems. So they bring someone else in. They find something over here, so they deal with that, and they think that's it. So they're kind of playing whack a mole, dealing with these issues in their home too. And then you go in and you still find significant issues throughout the house that really should have been found by somebody that knew what they were doing.
Well, I even go back to my infancy in this industry before, I would say, before we really had a good grasp on the process. Not to say that isolated remediations aren't effective. They're necessary. And in a lot of cases, people can't afford to do much more than one portion of a building or a house at a time. But taking the all-in approach, after you find out that you have multiple source areas throughout the environment, in this room and that room, and ceiling and attic and HVAC, the right way to do it is to pull the band-aid off and attack it all at once. But I do understand too that a lot of people, first of all, they're not even aware half the time to even ask to have somebody go look in other areas, because it's either out of sight, out of mind, or they're just hyper focused on one specific event. So I get it. There's a lot of variables, and it's not to say that we're critical of the homeowner or any other assessor for that matter. You're hired for what you're hired for, but it really does take a full scale inspection effort to find out exactly what's going on with your building, and we encourage people to do that all the time, and I know you guys do as well.
Yeah, my point there is, but and I agree with what you said. A lot of people just like we say it all the time, don't know any better. We wouldn't
Yeah,
either. But
no, I wouldn't either.
without being thorough and knowing what you're dealing with in all these different areas, you can't prioritize things to help you reduce exposure as much as possible. So that was my only point there. But Yeah, enough with the serious stuff. You want to have a little fun and maybe
Yeah, I
talk
do.
about yeah, let's do that because the last couple episodes haven't been that way. I want to play a little trivia here.
Well, I like trivia.
Yeah, and I want the listeners at home to play along
I'm
with
not
us.
very
See,
good at it though, so hopefully I know the answers to these questions.
yeah, I certainly hope so too.
I'm nervous. Now I'm nervous.
And we invite you to play along if you're listening. But a
You
lot of
can
this,
edit this out if I make myself look dumb, right?
yeah.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, a lot of this can relate back to our myth busting episode too. So if you haven't heard that, don't go back and cheat before listening to this. But we certainly encourage you to go listen to that episode. So what do you say, Adam?
Let's do it.
All right, we give you some layups here, and hopefully
All right,
people at home can get some of these ones here to start off with. But so true or false? Mold is always visible to the naked eye.
that would be false.
Yeah,
That would
but
be yeah, that would be very false.
it sounds like an obvious answer, but it's pretty common for people to just not believe they have a mold issue in their home when they call us because they can't see it. So it takes them so long, even with all the research they do, for them to believe mold could be affecting their health because they
Yep,
don't see it. It's
right.
hard for their doctor to convince them mold is an issue because they don't see it. It's hard for them to believe our results when we give them back because they can't see it. So that's why, even though it may seem obvious to a lot of people, I started off with that question.
Yeah, and you know what? When you guys go in to do testing, and it's been a while since the event occurred, the conditions of when it got wet aren't necessarily going to show up when you come in to test. You can take moisture readings under a window, but if it hasn't leaked for weeks, months, the moisture readings are going to come back. It may look dry. You know, there may be no visible sign. Maybe it barely got wet. Maybe it's been barely getting wet. Meters are limited. And so in a lot of cases, like what you would think would show up would be glaring. And then you guys take your samples in the walls or wall cavities or in a an outlet, and it comes back with elevated levels of spores, and people are like, it's not even wet. It didn't even read wet. You know, how could there be an issue here? And I try to tell people it only takes one event. And really, you don't know how many times it got wet necessarily, unless it was a pipe break. If it's a sudden and accidental issue, it started then, it ended then. But for reoccurring leaks, for continuous or repeated events, who knows? Who knows how long they've been getting wet? And so it shouldn't be a shock to anyone that if it's gotten wet once, maybe it got wet a lot more times, and ultimately, it really only takes one time just to cause an event where mold will grow. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and a good example is a house I was in yesterday. Inspection took forever just because it seemed like the more and more I crawled through that attic, the more issues I found because it looked like an attic that used to have old metal ductwork.
Mm,
Now had flex duct, but it was pretty consistent down the middle of the attic where it looks like the old ductwork was. And for those of you that don't know, metal ductwork is great from a hygiene and easy to clean standpoint. But down here in Florida, in our hot, humid attics, I mean, they stay hot and humid up there all year round. If there's any breach in that ductwork or in the insulation, can wreak havoc from a condensation standpoint. And that's what looked like had happened there. But there was no evidence of it from inside the house. The drywall or the plasterboard, I can't remember what it was exactly, looked fine from downstairs. But the further and further I went, the more mold growth was on that surface.
plaster doesn't show the same signs as drywall. It's superior in every way, by the way, to drywall. Plaster all day over drywall. And that's a a a a good example of that, where who knows how long it leaked, and ultimately from the bottom side, from the interior of the home, didn't show any type of damage unless it was painted over or sealed over multiple times. You never know, right, when you get out there,
Hmm.
how many times it's been retextured or repaired. And even if, unless you're the original owner of an old home like that, you won't know either. But yes, you're right. You don't know until you look deeper, you look further. Good luck getting a full evaluation of an attic or ceiling drywall if the insulation is in place, especially if it's blown. Forget about it. So it's difficult, and that's a good example of an area that you have to physically get up there to inspect. Until the inspection nanobots are readily available, there's no other way, right? And I know you're looking forward to that time.
Yeah, I'm hoping Elon's not too far away on
Yeah,
that one, but
yeah.
who knows? All right, another layup. What does mold need to grow? A, light, warmth, and food. B, moisture, a food source and time. C, sun and heat.
That would be B.
You're correct. Moisture, a food source, and time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, we have to have moisture for mold to start growing. We have to have that organic food source. And the longer something stays wet, the more likelihood we have for the more toxic molds to germinate, like Stachybotrys, Ectomium. So that's why it's so important to try to fix these moisture issues as soon as possible and remediate them, because because we have the moisture in the food source doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get these toxic molds. It just all has to do with the time frame. How long does it stay wet?
Yeah, the sunlight thing is funny, because I hear it all the time. We're like, it could just put this out in the sun, it's going to kill the mold. And I always wonder where that came from. And listen, I am not a biologist. Sean is not a biologist. He works alongside them, and I don't know what extent maybe there is something to it, but I always think about like where that came from, and ultimately I always come back to the sun will dry things. And so ultimately, if there's no moisture, there's no mold, or there's no active growth situation. So maybe that's where that came from. I don't know.
Maybe, but if you're listening, if you know where that came from, please let us know.
Yeah, I'd love to
Please
know. I'd love
comment.
to know.
Yeah, love to know too.
Yeah, yeah. I've been lately. I've been telling people because it's easy to get yourself to a state of panic and stress when you have it. You're in this environment with it, and you should take it seriously. But the stress side of it is something that I talk to people about all the time, because they are playing whack-a-mole in their heads, and they don't they just can't deal with all of the variables or they're having difficulty dealing with all the variables that are necessary to take care of it. So I always say, post remediation, where do you focus your energy? Is it on mold, potentially being in my environment, potentially affecting my health? There's always going to be some of that, but I always tell people to focus more on, how do I keep these areas dry?
Hmm.
If you focus as much of your energy on that, of your building period, how do I keep my building dry under my windows, around my building envelope, doors, HVAC systems, plumbed areas? That goes a long way towards preventing it from occurring in the first place or coming back.
Yeah, that's what I really appreciate about your company, Adam, and also Kevin Renner, who I hope to have on pretty soon, just because he's just as good as you guys. Um, and he's really good about taking time and educating people about that topic right there. Because the last thing we want as a remediator, even though I see it happen to way too many people, is we remediate the sources, but we still leave an opportunity for it to get wet again in the future, and you're having to deal with it all over again. So it's better to spend the time and resources throwing everything at that one source than trying to move on and fix other things in the home if you can't address the sources.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't take elevated levels of mold spores for regrowth. It can take any level of mold spores for regrowth. If it gets wet again, it's not if mold will grow. If, like you said, if it gets wet and the time is there, and there's a food source, which there typically is if there's any kind of dirt or soils in the environment, there's a good chance it's going to grow back. So focusing on the one variable you can control, which is stopping it from getting wet, because I don't think it's realistic to think you're ever going to be able to keep all soils from any environment, even if you try to live in a clinical state, unless you're in a clean room environment. So the ingredients are there. So the other piece which you can control is keeping it dry. And I mean, that really goes for all of it, from plum dairies to HVAC. And it's a big ask with HVAC. You just described a situation where the HVAC itself was sweating as a result of it being exposed to humidity and cold and more meaning, and you get condensation. And that's typically how it happens in an HVAC system. It's humidity and cold meeting somewhere. There's a failure in a connection or a junction, or a duct's got a hole in it, whatever, or the cabinet is leaking cold air. That's really it. And if you focus on stopping those things from occurring, you can really lessen the chance of you having an issue with growth.
Said. All right, this one might be a little more difficult, just because you probably see a lot of these pop up in lab results we provide. So I have a much better idea, just because this sheer amount of testing that we do on a daily basis.
Mhm.
But what's the most common type of indoor mold, you think? Uh, Penicillium, Aspergillus, Cladosporium, or Stachybotrys, the black mold?
Aspergillus.
So that's what I would have said too, but it seems like the answer is Cladosporium. It's
Really?
equally we see that a lot in ventilation systems, and it's very rare, now that I think about it, that Cladosporium doesn't show up in some way, shape, or form in
Interesting.
indoor testing. It's very rare we don't at least have trace amounts. So I think I can get on board with that too. But Aspergillus would probably be number two.
It's the one I hear about the most.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because it's in elevated levels versus trace, but that's cool. I wouldn't have thought that. Wouldn't have thought that. I knew Stacky wasn't the answer, because although I think you can find it in and around most showers, especially if there's been any leakage, because those things just stay wet. You don't see it in a lot of other areas. I don't know, where do you commonly find Stacky outside of bathrooms?
Yeah, it's usually those water
The
um,
bathroom mold, right?
bathrooms, kitchens, and we
Yeah,
find it a lot more. I mean, we get into discussions all the time with other indoor air quality people, mold assessors, and it seems like it's very rare that they ever find Stachybotrys. And say we find it a lot more than you think. Maybe just because of the intrusive type testing we do with wall cavities. It's very rare for it to show up in just a regular air sample, though. So if you're
right.
just doing air samples, the likelihood of you finding it in that is probably slim to none, just because of how heavy the spores can be. So it's very rare that they become aerosolized at all. But if they do, it's usually not for a long time, because they're so heavy, they do settle pretty quickly. And it's usually the mycotoxins
Yeah,
produced by Stachybotrys
yeah.
that are the big problem. So it's more likely that'll show up in your testing when you do the dust mycotoxin test. But again, it's rare to find a company that will perform that type of testing as well.
Yeah, you want to find it. I think the baseboards that are right up against the tub or shower are probably the first place I would look if you want to know, because those areas, again, finished carpentry doesn't belong around wet areas. And so, that's an area you commonly find it. And there's a good, I don't put a number on it, but pulling baseboards around showers or behind in and around toilets, there's a good chance, if you've ever had a water damage exposure, there's going to be an issue back there.
Yeah, and that's not to say we haven't found it on exterior walls.
Mm,
It is, we do find it sometimes when we have maybe grading issues or
Saturation issue.
breaches. Yeah, breaches in the exterior wall that's allowing water in down at the foundation level, and even some.
It's a soil type mold, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's needs to be just like soils. It's like probably extremely good to have it in your potting soil, but bad to have in your indoor air environment.
and we also find it sometimes in walls underneath windows that are
Mm,
chronically leaking.
yep.
Um, but in those situations, it's usually not an active problem where people would probably see the result of the moisture issues. A lot of times it's just still there because the source has been fixed, but it was leaking so bad in the past that it was wet enough to create that issue. All right. So next couple questions. Again,
I just got one wrong, so got to redeem myself here.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna take your score at the end of this. The next couple we talked about in our busting episode.
Hmm.
So again, don't go back and cheat before listening to these questions. You can go
No, I
back
won't.
afterwards.
I
But
won't. I won't.
all right, true or false? Again, this is one that people have probably heard for years and probably still told. But bleach kills all mold and prevents it from returning. True or false?
If it did, I'd be out of a job. So I'm going to go ahead and say false to that one.
There'd be no reason for our
There would be no
jobs
reason
at
for
all.
me.
Yeah.
None. Yeah. Yeah. That. I think that's probably the one I hear about the most. And I think at this point, most people understand that while bleach can have a purpose, I always tell people killing mold is not the goal. I'm not here to kill your mold. I'm
Hmm.
here to remove it and then try to remove as much particulate from the environment, which could potentially have, active, non-active mold spores in it. That's the goal of a remediation, not to kill your mold. It's great at sanitizing and killing bacteria. I think it has a place and a purpose if you're not chemically sensitive to it, which I think a lot of people are, and they don't even know it because it is pungent. But it shouldn't be used for the purposes of remediation. Um, I think using it as a patio cleaner and using it outside, I think it does have a purpose, but not in indoor spaces for the purposes of remediation.
Yeah. Plus, it may kill things on the surface level to make it easier to remove, but it's not going to
Yeah,
penetrate the substrate. And a lot of times, it's even going to
yeah,
discolor the surface and make it appear as if it's clean when it's not. If you had, like you said, you haven't physically removed it from the
yeah. To
area.
give you a false sense of security, it's often used by people who, not to throw them under the bus, but the maintenance community, they they sure love using it because it magically disappears,
Hmm.
and those who think they've been affected by it, out of sight, out of mind, and maybe that's enough as of a placebo for people to feel better, at least temporarily. But yeah, you see it a lot in the maintenance community, in apartments and maintenance crews. Man, they still use it, still bleach it and paint over it. Ultimately, if you don't correct the cause, it doesn't really matter what you do to it. It's going to come right back again.
Adam's trying to rage war against the maintenance
No, man.
companies of the
No
world.
offense. No offense to the maintenance communities. Call me. I'll help you. I can help you.
All right, true or false? This is a layup for each of us, but again, I can't tell you how many times people talk about moving into newer homes because,
Mm.
but true or false? Mold only grows in older homes.
It's so false that I'd be willing to say older homes because they're built with superior materials. Some of them are may have less likelihood of growing molds versus newer homes. I mean, over time, an old home that doesn't have proper maintenance, any building that doesn't have proper maintenance is eventually going to have exposures, water damage exposures. And unless it's block and steel, and even those, in some cases might even have an environment where it grows. But yeah, no, newer is not necessarily better.
Yeah, we'll say it again. Older homes, they're older, so there's going to be age that comes with that, and more of a likelihood that over time a water event has occurred in that home that maybe,
Opportunity, right?
yeah,
Opportunity.
because it's only a matter of time with a house before there's some sort of water damage, but it just comes down to how were those issues addressed? Were they remediated properly? I mean, there's plenty of people you can find on social media right now making a living over helping people manage their new construction build
Mm.
because it's becoming such an epidemic with these newer construction homes with how quickly they're going up, the lack of oversight during the project that we're finding more and more issues in these newer homes. And down here right now, the big thing, this may rage war against some of these builders, but we're already in the thick of it with a lot of them. So I don't care. But right now, a lot of it has to do with ventilation in the attics and the HVAC systems
Mm.
and how all of those are being set up right now. We're seeing a lot of havoc being wreaked in these newer homes because of all that.
Having been on the other end of it and torn apart and even gutted newer homes down to the frame and down to the block, I can tell you that's 100% accurate. Whether it's newer building methods or unqualified sub crews, I don't know why. I mean, we've had HVAC in buildings for 80 years now or more. Why now they're are we having these issues where they're having a problem balancing them, having a problem with the engineering, the architecture of these buildings? I don't know. That's way up, well above my pay grade. I will say, I'm seeing it a ton, and not to completely scare people who have newer homes, it is probably the most terrifying and evasive issue, because when you have a humidity situation that's reaching dew point, if it's pressurized and it starts to push down into your interior environment or into your walls, you could visibly see no sign of it, and the interior of your walls and things like that could be completely damp as a result, if you've got the humidity and the cold mixing. It's a problem.
Hmm.
So not every building has it, but if yours does, I encourage you to take it extremely seriously.
Yeah, and I just want to, if there's somebody in the construction world listening, I just want to make a plea to please try to do something about it. Please, because we have some of these neighborhoods where we're finding issues pretty early on in the development of the community. There's still plenty of homes being built within that community, but they continue to build them the same way. There's no adjustments made along the way to make it better, even though they see the problems that are being caused. So please, let's all fight to do something about it.
If that's the case, then it's a business decision, right?
Of
Where you
course.
understand you're building it incorrectly and you're just hoping that it doesn't come to fruition under the warranty. And what's weird is you can't buy a car without insurance, especially if you have a loan on it, right? You can have a home without insurance or a 30-year mortgage on a building, but the builders don't seem to be held accountable for offering warranties or maintenance past a year, maybe 3 years. I don't know. I mean, I haven't bought a new home in a while. I don't know if they offer different plans, but from what I hear, it's like a 1 year deal. You got 1 year, and if anything fails after that, you're on your own, which is pretty scary when you consider what the other, all of these issues. A lot of times you don't know they're even an issue until well into, 2 years, 3 years into the home, when you find out that the HVAC wasn't installed properly, or the shower was installed improperly, or there's a hole in the shower pan, or whatever, plumbing it, whatever it is, roof issues, all the building component issues. It's scary, and until more people stand up against that and demand, you know, better service, more oversight, and standards, they're going to just continue to do it. It's unfortunate.
Sure is. So which of these do you think is not true about black mold? A, it's the most dangerous mold. B, it can cause health issues for some people. Or C, it's commonly found in homes with water damage.
Which one is untrue?
Which one is not true about it? Yeah. A, it's the most dangerous mold. B, it can cause health issues for some people. Or C, it's commonly found in homes with water damage.
I feel like this is a trick question, but I'm
You
gonna
got to
go
put your
with,
thinking cap on for this one.
it's probably C, but I'm gonna say A. And the only reason I say A is I feel like everybody responds differently to different types of molds. And while it may be a more people may be more problematic for more people, I don't know that everybody responds that way to that particular type of mold. Could be wrong. Not a medical professional. We are not medical professionals. But am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, I like your thought process there. No, you are
Right.
right, and that
Okay.
is the case. Just from my experience, I mean, it's most known for its health effects,
Hmm.
but the reality is, like you said, everybody's affected differently, and there are several molds that we commonly find in homes that are capable of producing really potent mycotoxins,
Hmm.
and that's really what determines how sick somebody gets from our experience
Hmm.
and understanding whether or not those species are capable of producing the mycotoxins and whether or not you've been in the home. So, Stachybotrys, the black mold, just to pull everything together here, Stachybotrys is not the only mold that's capable of producing mycotoxins that can make
Right.
people sick.
Should be taken serious for sure. Just as really pretty much any molds that are growing in quantities in your environment. So, that's not to say it can't make you sick. I think all molds have the potential, whether they're looked at as good molds or bad molds or common molds or indoor or outdoor. I still go back to, if it's growing inside the box you live in, you need to get rid of it. And breathing anything in concentration like that that's off gassing a mycotoxin can't be good for you in maybe the short term or the long term. So I treat them all the same, and I think everybody else in my industry does. The goal is to remove it and to try to remove the particulate count in and around it down to what's considered normal fungal ecology. So just so you know, I don't know if I've ever said that on this podcast before. All molds are treated the same as far as from the remediation standpoint in regards to how we remove them. There's no difference between one or the other. Remove it. That's the goal.
Yep. Now, what type can play a role in how it's affected other types or other areas of the home, and whether or not we need to expand that scope?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, it should all be treated the same from a remediation standpoint, a source area standpoint. Where did this go? All right, what color do you think mold can't be? A lot of people, I think, have this idea of what color mold is in their mind.
What color can it be?
Yeah. A, pink, B, green, C, blue, or D, none of the above. Mold comes in all colors.
Deep.
Yeah. It's wild, the colors that I've seen. I mean, I
Yeah.
sometimes, next time I run across a crazy mold colony, I'm going to post a picture of it because
Yeah.
sometimes it literally does look like artwork uh, with
So
all the
I
different
have I
colors
have
and
some
how it
moldy
forms.
I have some moldy wallpapers that I put on my phone sometimes because it is, if we can take a step back for a second, it can, pattern wise, it can be beautiful. You don't want it inside your house. If you were to go into hiking and see some of the patterns we see outdoors, you'd be like, man, that's really incredible.
Mhm.
It's like mandalas of bio life and growing in these cool patterns. And now we're really nerding out on this. But I agree. Sometimes it's wild what you can, why it grows, the color it grows. You know, Again, you don't want it in your interior environment, but it is can be cool to look at.
Yeah, and the sad part about it is usually once it is getting to that state, we've got a serious issue
You got a big
in
problem.
the home. You got a really,
Yeah.
really big problem.
Yeah. I don't encourage you to keep it because it looks nice.
No. Yeah. Don't keep it around long enough to find out for sure.
Yeah, definitely not.
Um, we're gonna skip that one. I mean, mold can grow pretty quickly, 1 to 2 days. It doesn't take much. That's why it's important. Everybody preaches nipping the source in the bud as fast as possible, even if it just happened. And we want to dry that material out as long as possible because if it stays, because you fix the leak quickly, but that building material stays wet, there's still an opportunity for mold to grow.
All right, here's an analogy. All right. Mold is the bullet, moisture is the gun. So if you get rid of the gun, you don't have any bullets. So focus on getting it dry or keeping it dry. There's a reason why there's drying companies out there and there's hundreds of them. Because if you do get to it quickly enough, and get it dry quickly enough, as long as you are aggressively drying. Can I get on a pedestal for a second? I know we don't have that much more time, but
Hey, you're the one
all
with
right.
the with the timeline here. Yeah, go for it.
You know what? We're going to do a whole episode on drying a building. All
Okay.
right. I will say this, that there is a big problem right now in the drying industry that I see. And we'll go into more specifics on that. But the insurance company should never be telling the dry out company how to dry a building. I will say
Oh,
that right now.
don't get
And
me on my
and
soapbox there. Yeah,
right. And
that'll
the
take
dry
up an
out
hour.
company, yeah, and the dry out company should never be pushing aside what is a known practice, right? They should never say, well, this is how it would typically be done, but because the insurance company hasn't approved it yet, we can only do this. That's an enormous issue and an incredible conflict of interest. And drying a building is drying a building. So maybe we'll jump into that on a future episode. But I've seen it a lot here recently because of all the flooding and all the hurricane damage. And if you want to grow mold, just pretend you're drying a building without removing baseboards and without injecting air into wall cavities or removing insulation out of wall cavities. To tell somebody that you've dried their building properly and you haven't done anything evasive and you think you're going to drive through material through the
Mhm.
floor because you have some kind of magical machinery that doesn't exist is an enormous problem. I have a big problem with that. I really do.
Yeah, that could take up 2 hours of our time talking
Yeah.
about that. So
Yeah.
I agree. We
We
should.
should bring in a dry out company, one of the ones that we trust, because I haven't been in that industry for a long time, just to talk about that. Honestly, I think it would be mind opening for a lot of people who have hired companies, and then you can go back and say, well, you know what, they did that, and
Mhm.
I was told that it was dry. So I think that that's a good future episode for us.
I agree because a lot of times those are major sources in a home
Sure.
where the say the cabinets weren't taken out to drive behind it because quote unquote the insurance company wasn't going to pay for that. So I
Right.
decided I'm not going to advise the homeowner accordingly to pull that out and dry it out.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
That's a rough one.
do you know what life saving medicine was discovered using mold?
Penicillin,
Penicillin. You're correct.
accidentally from the story, right? Like he
From what
was
I understand. Yeah.
eating over his petri dish, and some breadcrumbs fell in there, and came back the next day and saw that the molds were growing and it was fighting off the disease, and the rest is history. So see, mold is good too
Now
in the right setting.
this may ruin this food for some people. But do you know what food owes its flavor to mold?
Blue cheese is one of my favorite foods.
Is it?
I love blue
That
cheese.
surprises me. I can't stand it.
See, I mean, you're a mold guy, and I should probably not like blue cheese, but I love chicken wings, and the best thing to dip it in is blue cheese. I don't even want to hear the R word. All right, none of that ranch junk around me. Okay, I'm dipping it in fungi because I'm a fun guy.
That's funny. Yeah, but penicillium mold is used in blue cheese to help the aging process and the flavor
Yeah,
process. If you didn't know that, I mean, there's
nobody's been exposed to more mold than me. Maybe you. I don't know. So
maybe that's why. Yeah, maybe that's why you're still so healthy
I've
after all those years in moldy
yeah,
environments. Who
just got to
knows?
be friends with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. See if you think this is true or false. There's a Guinness World Record for the largest mold collection of mold. You think that's true or false?
That's got to be true.
It is. Apparently, there's some mycologists with an impressive, like, huge mold library somewhere, which
You
I
ever
kind of would want to see and
Yeah,
visit. To be honest with you.
I think that would be great. You ever seen World of Worlds, read the book,
Yeah,
seen the
I've
movie?
seen the movie.
You know what ultimately takes down the alien species from you know destroying Earth and the human population? It's mold and bacteria, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, see? So this guy has the collection, he's got like an armory full of mold that he could weaponize at some point if he ever needed to, if we ever do end up getting invaded by the aliens. All right, I'm off topic as usual.
Well, two more fun ones. How
All
about
right.
that? What do you think Mold's favorite holiday is?
God, I should know this. This is going to be a dad joke, and
We are
I,
dads, so we gotta throw
I don't
the
know. I don't know what is it.
Halloween because it loves dark and spooky places.
Okay, I can see that. I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like some kind of holiday like that has the word fungus in it or something. I don't know.
No, Mold loves to live in those dark areas with, you know, we'll say less airflow. I mean, that's what makes it so evasive, so elusive, I should say. So hard to find is because it's usually hiding in those the dark areas inside walls and
Yeah,
corners of your home. You just wouldn't expect it.
the areas that won't dry or don't
Yeah,
dry quickly.
yeah. And last one, what do you think Mold's superhero name would be? I've got a few of
I don't know. Captain Fungus. I don't know.
them. The Fungi Fighter,
Yeah,
Captain Moisture, Mold Man. I can think of several, but
definitely.
I would love to.
Maybe more of a villain though.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
if anyone's listening, could think of a couple fun names to throw out there.
Yeah,
I'd love maybe
I think it would
make
be
a
a
meme
good
out of it.
yeah, we could get with Disney and see if we could, have Pixar create a mold movie where the villain is, a certain type of mold, right? Any kind of mold. And there's a guy out there that's fighting against it to keep people healthy. I can see it. You feel free to steal our ideas as long as you credit us at some point. I'm good with that. Financially, I mean, credit us with money.
So, given what you told me about your obsession with blue cheese, I think
Yeah.
I know the answer to this. But would you rather spend a week in a moldy attic or sniff a moldy loaf of bread for every day for a month?
Neither sound very
Mm-mm.
fun, but no, I'm not a confined spaces guy. I'm big shoulders, so get me out of that attic as quickly as possible. I
Yeah,
do not
I
want to be up there very long.
I'd take my chances with that loaf of bread any day.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
So I could tell you how brutal it was crawling through that attic yesterday, finding what I told you about. And
Yeah.
neither sound fun, like you said, but I think it'd be fun. That
Shout out to all the HVAC contractors out there.
oh
I don't think everybody talks about roofers. They talk about guys digging ditches on the side of the road and everybody who works in these hot environments. Can't think of anybody who has it harder than air conditioning contractors in the state of Florida. You guys are amazing. Um, the good ones out there, and there's way more bad than good. The good ones out there that go to the extremes to make sure those systems are functioning properly, but have to crawl through those spaces and work in those spaces hours and hours every single day. Imagine you did that 8 hours a day in an attic, 8 hours a day. Not not for me.
no, I mean you know why most of them don't even want to touch some of these attics until
Yeah.
the cooler months come around. I mean, you totally get that. But yeah, the ones that are willing to take it on all year long,
But they're
I can't
busier
imagine.
during this time of season because their systems are failing
Hmm.
mechanically because they're under such a load, and so you've got guys up there. By the way, not small guys. I've seen enormous guys up there in those spaces. I just feel bad, man. That's a tough job. Yeah. So shout out to you guys out there fighting the good fight in the attics.
Yeah, yeah, you can't say that enough. Especially like you said, the good ones. We really appreciate you guys. But I know you're on a time crunch here to get out, Adam. I
Yeah.
also have to get out of here
Yep.
and get to a job. We just wanted to make sure we could fit in this episode because it's haven't been as consistent as we had planned or like to, just because with all the craziness down here. But it was good hopping on and chatting with you for a little while.
Definitely. Looking forward to the next one. We'll get back on the horse again, and I encourage you guys, if you have any questions or you even want to be a part of the show, you got a story to tell and you'd love to get on with us sometime, or just have questions and want to talk about a nightmare scenario, reach out to us. We're not, this is not an exclusive thing. We want it to be interactive, and we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, send us your questions by either commenting on our YouTube video. You can send us messages on Instagram if you want to send us a video message for us to to answer on the show, love to do that. Or we can answer you in private, setting up a phone call, talking about it. But I am excited. We do have a few guests lined up here in the near future. I'm excited about. I'm hoping it's extremely educational and fun for most people. And most of all, just provide enough information for you to make decisions if you're ever dealing with these situations down the road.
Exactly.
Well, thanks again, Adam. It was good
Yep.
chatting with you, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. See you on the next one.
The content in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. While our goal is to educate, the hosts are not medical professionals, and the opinions expressed are their own. For any health concerns or questions about mold exposure and its effects, please seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider.